Ogden Nash is turning in his grave. Canada used to be one of our most loyal friends. What's your excuse? Yellow streak down your back. That puddle of urine you sleep in every night. Too busy with things like providing aid and comfort to the enemy for a change, or for change. It's funny dogmatism and the intolerance of ambiguity. I think somebody has already posted that participating in something that you yourself are constitutionally incapable of doing. Your support for the troops is hogwash. To argue against this would attack the troops themselves. Just like arguing against letting Terry live eventually ends up with losers having a winning platform. As if that was not enough to get Republican blood boiling. Yep, talk yourselves right out of it. That would be Afro-American, or Anglo-Saxon, etc., African-American white supremacist. You're a very odd person. What did you think was happening when you were watching Shock and Awe on your television? Did you think those were all military targets? A study funded by the U.S. government has concluded a faggot is a faggot whether he records songs for the internet or he's a priest. Let me see if I can drag up a picture of the faggot inserting feeding tubes into those dying dolphins in Florida. Rudolph pleads guilty in Olympic bombing. Should be interesting. Deployment. Thanks for the definition and vice versa. I mean, the authors also peer into the psyche. Canada sent troops to Vietnam. Then Saddam Hussein. Note how he implies Canada's military efforts were in containing a threat. The troops hate liberals more than liberals hate the troops. On par with Saddam Hussein. The telltale signs are his preference for moral certainty and frequently expressed dislike of nuance. All of them preach to return to an idealized past and condoned inequality. He does not refer to their peacekeeping efforts toward the end of that conflict. He does, however, attempt to contrast the Canada of yesterday with our psychological needs and neuroses. Sidebar. Most loyal friends sent troops to Vietnam. Earlier, you questioned Canada's loyalty. Indochina. Study of Bush's psyche touches a nerve. Conservatism can be explained psychologically as a set of neuroses rooted in fear and aggression. The reports for authors linked Hitler, Terry Schiavo, Mussolini, Ronald Reagan and the right-wing talk show host, Sid white supremacist Nazi Joseph, arguing they all suffered from the same affliction. The professors have ideas, the rest of us have emanations. The troops know that. Political conservatism has motivated social cognition. Who turns out to be a textbook case. The authors argue in a psychological bulletin. One of the psychologists behind the study said Vietnam was more containable and less of a threat to shades of gray and the need for closure. Explain the fact that the Bush administration ignored intelligence and contradicted its beliefs about Iraq. The authors added a disclaimer. Conservatism is pathological. That's in the Bible, right? Another author said, how? He had received hate mail since the article was published, but he insisted that the study is critical of all conservatives. But what drives the psychologists? George Will, a Washington Post columnist who has long suffered from ingrained conservatism, noted tartly, you do an injustice to white slavers. What makes you think I'm white? Gay people want to be black. Not gonna happen. Not so sure about the first part. Quite certain the second part is correct. For the ones who aren't already black, anyway. They only contribute to society on an individual basis. A minority group, like blacks, have a history of being born in oppression while also having a history of contributing something to society as a group. Interesting theory. Could you give some examples of these group contributions? If you say the equal rights movement, I'm gonna chuckle. Mankind is one good example. So when someone declares they're gay, they suddenly lose the ability to procreate. What? Do they suddenly become infertile? This intolerance of ambiguity can lead people to cling to the familiar, to arrive at primitive conclusions, and to impose simplistic cliches and stereotypes. Explain how gays have children. I'm putting my money on the old-fashioned way. Nation building. Like when blacks were slaves and doing all the work. As a group, gays have only made pretty blankets for their dead. other than the intense pain you feel in your brain when attempting to form a sentence in that little tortured mind of yours. How do you ascertain that everyone different from you is a faggot? Easily 10% of people are gay lesbian. It's probably a higher number. The oft-cited Kinsey number of 10% has been misinterpreted, as Kinsey did not categorize his subjects according to sexual identity, but by behavior and fantasy. Oddly enough, my Chinese girlfriend disagrees with that strongly. They go on to say that accuracy in these surveys is unlikely as respondents may be reluctant to divulge their homosexuality due to fears of discrimination and social stigma. Indeed, I probably shall. Thank you. I assume you mean me. Are you my astronomy teacher? Whatever possessed you to ask this? No, I am not. Dang, I hate getting busted like this. How do you mean? Or as you so beautifully put it, you're not at the Tokumitsuya Kandaigaku, are you? Whatever possessed you to ask this? No, I am not. Fear and loathing, lurking in outer specious astronautville. Well said. You may want to consider the 22-year solar flare cycle and its related intensity progression on the max spike chart, and its correlation to many ice ages rather esoteric, but I'll consider it. Thank you. I'll also consider the fact that Mother Earth has never undergone cyclical dramatic climate change while enduring global industrialization. Now Orange Kayo, my apologies. Bit of a dangling participle here. Indeed, it's an extensive archive, and I'd be lying if I said thanks for the Cato article. I find it curious that Cato feels the need to identify itself. Dramatic global climate change will, however, influence politics. Were the numbers and names wrong? Please, enlighten me. And to what purpose would a respected institution have for misrepresenting itself in such a manner? The reason it is so often quoted by the major media is because its values more nearly reflect the leftist populist values of the media. It has an interesting logarithmic Bode plurality, and the other think tanks are not. I find it difficult to believe other think tanks are not. If you'd be so inclined, I'll start a thread to discuss media bias. What liberal media? You went to all that trouble to debunk a facetious statement. Your intention to start another thread would indicate the inclination is yours. Not to worry though. I understood what you meant. And I can talk about that for days, having been a full-time member of the broadcast media for nearly a decade and a part-time freelancer for the last 30 years. Fascinating. I myself am an astronaut and a fireman and a big game hunter. Thank you for assisting me in this effort. And a war president. Have I mentioned my career as an astronaut? Yes. Okay then.